who is here? All right, we're going to get started because we have a lot to cover in this 1 hour. So we know that strong relationships are the key to success of apprentices. And we know that building strong relationships takes intentional focus and effort. Today, our panelists are 3 people who have been involved in ECE apprenticeships for many years and have worked with ESEPs along the way. Each of them is unique in important ways and have been rock stars in building relationships with high school youth, college students, and adults, and being equally successful with members of widely diverse populations. I am confident that you will enjoy hearing from them and will learn a lot from their personal stories and reactions. I have not introduced myself yet. I am Camilla Rand. I am ESEP's Chief Strategy Officer, and we have this amazing panel today. We will be providing our moderator, who I will introduce in just a minute, will be providing questions to our panel of experts. And we will go probably until about 1:20, and then we will allow about 10 minutes for Q&A. So please feel free to drop any questions in the chat, or you can wait until the end. Okay, and with that, I would love to introduce today's moderator, Sandra Moore, who I'm sure many of you know. She is ESEP's Chief Program Officer, who oversees our California sponsored programs in partnership with our registered apprenticeship program directors. And with that, I would like to hand it on over to Sandra, who will start us off.
Okay, good afternoon and late afternoon for some folks. I see we're nationwide today. I see lots of different states, and that is definitely very exciting. And Camilla already did a great job of introducing me. I am Sandra Moore, the Chief Program Officer here at ESEPS. I have been here for, hard to believe, almost going on 3 years now. And I am by no means the star of this show. So I'm going to allow the panelists to introduce themselves. And let's start off with having Ms. Joya introduce herself first.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sandra. It's such a pleasure to be here and see all beautiful, diverse faces and wonderful states. I'm Dr. Joya Sharon. I'm the Education Teacher Prep Program Coordinator at Berkeley City College. And I also oversee our youth apprenticeship, our expanded learning apprenticeship, and our early educator apprenticeship. It's just such a joy to be here. And I've been doing this work collaboratively with Sandra and Camilla and those that you're going to hear from for about 6 years now. So I'll pass it on to my colleague, Daryl.
Hello. I am Daryl Bright. Currently, I am a registered apprenticeship programs director here at ESEPS. And in that role, I provide technical assistance to a bunch of different programs that range from expanded learning to early childhood and some youth groups. We have Cecilia here, so I'm excited to share. And before joining ESEPS, I worked with a previous partner agency that provides Head Start services, early Head Start services to about 1,200 families. And we had an apprenticeship that, worked with 7 different community colleges, had about 120 different apprentices per semester at the peak of my time there. And so happy to be here, and I will pass it to Cecilia.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm super happy to be here with all my favorite people. I've learned so much from everyone here in this space. I'm probably the baby in this group in terms of experience and expertise in apprenticeships in general. I'm Cecilia Terrazas. I am the coordinator of diversity and inclusion here in Oakland Unified School District. I've been in this particular role, I think it's 3, almost 4 years, and I've been in the district 7. I started as an ethnic studies teacher and a high school administrator, and I've been in this role. Really, my work is focused on how do we increase the amount of Latino staff we have to represent the amount of students that we have, which is 47%. And so that's kind of how this work started. And then it became into like, well, if we want more Latino students, staff, have them in our schools. And so then how do we, and so then that's when we began exploring this conversation around apprenticeship and meeting with ESEPs and Dr. Chapman and now Daryl. Thank you for having me.
Great, thank you so much. And Cecilia is being very modest as she says she's the baby of the group. She has a lot to offer and a lot to share. You know, ESEPS is known for bringing the cream of the crop, and today is no different. We are going to show you in this hour how this cream rises to the top and talk about the importance of strong relationships. So just to get us started and kick us off, we know that strong relationships are really critical to the success of apprentices, especially non-traditional students and workers and members of marginalized communities and first-generation college students. And I'm going to task Daryl with the first question. And for people who don't really know, can you describe the demographics of apprentices that most of the panelists work with and explain why building strong relationships is so critical with apprentices who come from those kinds of backgrounds?
Well, yeah, I guess, Sandra, thanks for asking the first question. But traditionally, it's really reflective of the teaching pool in general. There were predominantly women of color from a plethora of different backgrounds, some from the communities, some that kind of came into the communities from other countries and other spaces. A lot of the planning and thought went into, again, as Cecilia said, recruiting and bringing in Latino teachers to serve our students, because we wanted our teachers to reflect the population of the students that we serve. But we also started to see in our communities other demographics coming in. So you had a heavy Farsi speaking demographic, you had a heavy Tigranian. So really try to bring all of that together and understand the different needs for all the different communities were like major pieces in the success of the program. So really creating, again, a family type of vibe. We strived in creating that. We put a lot of programming and a lot of thought in making sure that families were included. So we had childcare on site. We had dinner for families on site when we were providing different services, just so we can make sure that it was a safe place for everybody to be. And in that, those small pieces started to see, you know, a different type of buy-in. It was more about my family and my community than just me as an apprentice. And that created those relationships and opened up for some of those conversations to be had that dug a little bit deeper, that you traditionally don't get from just having a conversation. So, yeah.
And I am going to put you on the spot, Daryl, before I go to Miss Joya and ask you. You said mostly female. As the only male in this space, did you do anything special to build relationships?
I'd like to say no. You know, my mama taught me well. So, but however, there are also a lot of different, you know, perceptions and lines that you have to take into consideration when dealing with any population, youth, whether it be women in general. And for me, it was just maintaining a professional space and making sure that, you know, everything is discussed in a professional way, and making sure use your work emails, and, you know, just providing these different opportunities to engage, but make sure that there were boundaries set from the beginning for me.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, Miss Joya, you are up next. In the context of being a college instructor, which I completely identify as a former college instructor, and I miss it sometimes, but not enough to go back. And sometimes it's difficult to break through that power dynamic between the teacher and the student. How have you been able to forge relationship with your students, and how have you prioritized their apprentices' program success, and how you think relationships are built?
Definitely. Thank you, Sandra, for the second question. As you heard from my colleague, that the demographics that we serve, I want to say that open door policy is the bare minimum. You should be doing that anyway. But we need to really show up in our authenticity, I should say, with our process of our curriculum and the physical space, it has to feel inclusive. Everyone should have a sense of belonging. And I know we talk the talk, but what does that really look like in action as a faculty member? Do they see themselves in the curriculum? Do they see themselves in the instructor? Are you, making yourself available to explain those theoretical concepts in their practice, because apprenticeship is unique. They get to actually work with children, work in the field while they're getting the materials of your coursework. And so we have to be very thoughtful and very intentional about what that looks like for those who work full time or those who are juggling housing and childcare and transportation and limitation of technology skills. And so, this is typically what a community college student is, but apprenticeship makes it a little bit different because they're working too. And so an instructor really needs to value who the students are. And also, it's not a power over dynamic, it should be a power with. By the end of the class, they should have the power to navigate that brick and mortar college system. They should be able to navigate, they should be able to leave you and come back to Dr. Chavrin as a mentor so they can continue being successful in the rest of their matriculation and course trajectory. Because you all know that it's very intimidating to start college for the first time, especially when you don't have people in your family who've gone to college. You're the first to enter into that space. So there's this cultural capital that you may not necessarily have. And so the instructor has to have an authentic care and empathy about their success. They need to really understand what success looks like. And that may not be submitting everything an essay format, it may be oral, it may be video, it may be what their strengths are. It's, this generation, I'm a mom of 4 kids, they like to communicate during text messages, and the way of their communication looks a lot different than what my communication looked like when my mom used to say, hey, Joya, call the librarian for the answer. They don't have those same type of ways of learning. And so our courses need to adapt to how they learn, and we need to understand how they communicate. We need to understand the gaps in our own knowledge, skills, and competency needs as faculty members, because we're always learning and growing too. And we also need to be willing to make change, which is hard because a lot of us want to come in and teach the same old, but many of our curriculum, those people don't look like us. If you're teaching child growth and development, there were women theorists, there were people of color theorists, but we still continue to teach things where they don't see themselves. So we got to be willing to change and adapt and look at our physical space as well as our social space. So I'll stop. I'll keep going.
No, I love that. I love what you said about that open door policy, because what I really identify with is there's a difference between having a crack in the door and having the door really be open, to have that student and that apprentice feel like you actually can come to me. When I see you walk by the door, I will actually say, hey, come on in, let's have a chat. That's what a real open door policy looks like, inviting them into that door. I love that. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, Miss Cecilia, you ready?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
All right. What differences do you see in building relationships with high school youth as compared to building relationship with adults? What would you say is critical to being successful at building relationships with youth apprentices?
Yeah, I was thinking about this question, and we just launched an adult apprenticeship, and I feel like a lot of the things are the same. Like young people I've been doing for 30 years, but what I found is the same, like both of what Dr. Chavrin and Daryl are talking about. Building relationships is critical, keeping an open door policy, really getting them to trust you. I think with young people in Oakland have a lot of resistance capital. And so they will tell you about yourself if you are not honest and open with them. And I love that about them. Like, one of the things I love, like, yes, give it to me, give it to me. But it's that part of like, how can I be authentic with them, who I am, bring my whole self to the door, so that way they can bring their whole selves. Because they're complex. Like, life is complicated for an adolescent. They're like trying to figure it all out. They want to be free and independent, but yet they need your guidance, right? And so, I think that's where it is a little bit kind of different than the adults, right? And so how do I honor and respect you as a young human? How do I know that you are the expert of your own experience? I'm not going to come here and tell you what to do. I don't know you, I don't know your life, I ain't been there. So it's taking a lot of self-reflection as well and really listening. Like, how do I let you lead? How do I help you figure out what's important to you, not me telling you what's important to you? And I find when I lead with my own vulnerability, then they tell me things, right? Like I'm a lot of times a symptom of not like showing up on time or turning in their work as a symptom of a larger problem. And so I want to ask, hey, what's going on? Like that's always a question that I lead with. Hey, what's going on? Is there something happening for you? Because I see this behavior, like, what do you need? And really trying to like ask more about them as opposed to just like, here's the expectation, this needs to get done. It really is kind of like calling them in. Like, how do I, and like authentically, it can't be fake. You really have to 100% believe in the well-being of the person in front of you. And so I think like showing that and asking about like, hey, your sister, you know, I heard you told me she was tried out for the band. What happened? Like, so really kind of leading in those things because they want to know you're not there for a paycheck, which is always funny. You're like, no, we don't get paid a lot here, but but they want to know you're not here for a paycheck, right? You here for like because you care. They want to know you care about them, and so I think really showing that. And then I think the other thing though that I do add on because I like yes, I love you. Yes, I care about you. Yes, I'm going to ask you a lot of questions and check in on you, and I'm also going to hold you accountable. Young people don't want people who don't hold them accountable. They don't respect them because they don't feel like they're people don't have high expectations for them. One of the biggest indicators of success and for like high school students, for example, is the belief of the teacher in the student. Like that is the great, I can train. It's not professional development. It's not all these other things. It's the belief of the individual there who's teaching. And so like, how do I lead with that? But that also means I'm going to call you on your stuff. So I've already talked to you 3 times. You told me you were going to do this and we did all the things that you said. So now what? Oh, miss. Oh. So I think that's like another piece is like they respect you if you care about them, you're authentic, and then you're holding them accountable to what their goal is, not my goal, their goal. You told me this was important to you. Okay, well then you didn't show up for it. What's going on? Tell me what's happening.
I love that. That was a nice little nugget. You can't teach caring. You either care or you don't care. And they're gonna call you on your stuff if they see that you don't care. I love that nugget. Okay, so Cecilia, don't relax because I'm gonna give you the next question. Facilitating the development of impactful relationships with program participants requires thoughtful, intentional program design. So in what ways does this design of the Oakland Leadership Youth Apprenticeship facilitate the development of such relationships? And can you give us a couple of examples of how you saw the impact of those design elements in real time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the whole thing has to be designed with that in mind. And I think we led with that, starting from like even our recruitment, like how we recruit. So my partner and I, we go into each of the school sites and I'm doing it. I'm doing the recruiting because I'm the one that's going to be meeting with these young people, talking to these young people. And the frame of the program is really about, again, back to vulnerability. Like I lead with love, I lead with care, and I lead with authenticity. And so I need them to see that from me. So I have to be the person who's in front of them, trying to recruit them into the program, but giving vulnerable pieces of myself. Here's who I am. Here's how I failed life. Here's some things that are painful for me to talk about. And that's just in my presentation because I want them to see who I am and really kind of invite them in. And we invite, and then I think the other thing is around like our messaging, right? It's not about like, hey, who wants to be a teacher? Because nobody does, sadly. But it really is calling them in. Like, I'm being honest about our situation. 47% of our students are Latino, and our teachers are only 22% Latino. That's a huge gap. That's a problem. And so I put that out on Front Street. I'm putting it in front of everyone else. And we talk about even in that recruitment session, what does that mean to you? How does it matter? And so people were having like deep conversations in a like 20-minute like recruitment session. And so students have come to me, they sign up immediately. Yes, they want to be part of that. I follow up with them. We do interviews. We meet one-on-one. Sometimes, a lot of times by phone. We're meeting students where they don't want to Zoom. They want to talk on the phone. And so that leads into then like, now we're here on the very first day, the launch of the program, right? I've talked to you. I've reached out to your parent or guardian. They know you're in the program. We've texted a couple times. So like all that stuff was like little things that and they saw me acting crazy in their recruitment section because I'm just a little crazy if you can't tell. And then there's the launch, right? And in the launch, we build in 2 sessions where we're doing community building and we're getting to know each other and we're acting silly. And again, I'm leading with the silliness. And then I'm also checking in with them one-on-one, right? They start their class, then I'm pulling students out. Hey, how are you? Tell me what your goals are. What do you think might be a struggle? And really from those, kind of getting to know really students really well, like deeply. I had a student whose father died while we were in the middle, like unexpectedly, right? And she told that to me. And then I went to her, I went to the hospital, I went to support her. We worked with Dr. Shavrin was her teacher at the time. And so I worked with Dr. Shavrin, like we gave her the space to just be sad and to be not in class. But I think like those relationships, all those check-in points, the emails and texts to parents really built for like, I always say, like if a student tells you something that intense, that's a gift. Like they have entrusted you with a gift of a very tender and hard thing for them. And they shared it, right? Like how many of those gifts do we just keep inside ourselves and we just manage it alone? And so I really feel like the way we've designed it, where there's check-ins along the way and that staff person, and then of course, having Dr. Shavrin, like staff who care about kids in that same way, like all of that really helps and they feel it. And then they give you your gifts, which are sometimes heavy, hard, and painful. And I hope I answered all your questions.
You did, and I think you're the perfect balance of silliness and professionalism. I love it. Okay, Daryl, you are up next. A unique component of ESEP's apprenticeship design is the role of the success coordinator. Can you give us an overview of what a success coordinator does and specifically about how the ability of the success coordinators to forge relationships with apprentices is integral to their success? And give us a couple of examples. Uh-oh, we can't hear you. You're on mute.
I got you. So success coordinator is the glue, is what we call it for the apprentices. They are the first line, the first point of contact for apprentices into whatever they're trying to figure out in the role that I played. And I think, as Cecilia said, they were integral in recruitment and going out to these spaces and getting to know individuals in their own spaces to bring them into what you were doing. So as a success coordinator, you're really that point of contact between the college, between the employer, the apprentice, and whatever other community-based organizations they may be bringing to the table, because we do a lot of different recruitment from a lot of different agencies that may have some responsibilities in other spaces. So the success coordinator really kind of brings all that together. In addition, in the role that I played, it was really a data place too. So we had to hold all of the data, all of the demographic information, all of the grades that they were getting. We were tracking hours. So you really have to have a good rapport with individuals to be able to get all of that information from them in a timely manner or what you need. Or really, as Cecilia was saying, building it into the process of your program design and really just setting those checkpoints often and very accessible for individuals. So not only having those online check-ins, we show up to sites. And as a success coordinator, you had to have a rapport with not only the apprentices, but the different center directors, area managers, and all the different spaces that you had to occupy to be able to help apprentices in their space. So not only is that relationship important with building with the apprentices, it's with those other individuals within the agency as well, in that success coordinator role. In addition, with the colleges, you were working with a lot of different instructors. In my role as success coordinator, we did onboarding for instructors that were new to apprenticeships and just letting them know the different nuances of what these individuals were going through as full-time working adults taking classes with families and really getting them to understand that this is not your traditional student. The majority of them might have been second language learners. Even if it wasn't just Spanish, they still had some barriers that had to be addressed. So really being an advocate as a success coordinator. In addition, not, as Cecilia was saying, not being, you know, a crutch. You don't necessarily want to end up having them depend on you for everything. You're really building strong individuals. And by that, you're walking them through a lot of these processes. You're not necessarily just doing it for them. You're walking through every step and engaging them with every step, providing opportunities for them to do it in groups. We saw so much strength in the cohort-based model and those individuals going through a process together that it took a lot off of the success coordinator when you can see the strength of the group once you start to build those bonds within the cohort. And this, I would say specifically, just I had a situation with an apprentice that, you know, wasn't necessarily holding their end of the bargain, so to speak. There was a lot of not follow through on some different levels, and you know, I was really good with the success coordinator at the time because at this time I was a manager and I knew the center director where this person worked at, and we kind of had check-ins pretty often. Again, we have weekly check-ins, have check-ins with the center director. He had kind of check-ins, so I knew this person was struggling in an area, but having to sit them down and call them out and walk them through what that looks like for a regular employee. Like, you are an employee now. You're not just an apprentice. You have to follow these call out methods. You have to follow all these different procedures and showing them the way instead of just telling them and dropping it from the next step. So, you know, we had some rough spots when showing her through, but eventually she, you know, got herself together and ended up presenting with me in a panel at an ESEPS conference. So that was a full circle moment because again, it's in these relationships, if you're expecting, as Cecilia said, to perform and you're wanting them to show, there's going to be some rocky roads. And as long as you know, they know you're coming from a place of love and that you want the best for them, a lot of that could be avoided. A lot of conflicts is avoided. I call it the path of the least resistance. So
We can't hear you, Sandra.
I said something so profound and y'all missed it.
Ah.
Okay, I'm gonna move on now. Okay, Miss Joya, as you design your course syllabus and assignments and group work, how do you think about encouraging the development of relationships between the students? Because that's a heavy lift, putting all that together. And can you give us a couple of examples of the ways in which peer relationships can support student success within the context of an apprentice program?
Beautifully. And if I miss anything, Sandra, please add in, because I want to acknowledge we've both been in the education field 30 years, but you were faculty longer than me. And so with that, Uh-oh, can you hear me or did I go out?
Yeah, you paused for a minute, but we got you back.
Okay, good. I'm sorry if my Wi-Fi seems to be acting up right now, but basically, you have to have projects that give the knowledge, the skills, the competencies to meet the syllabus requirements of your student learning outcomes for my fellow faculty on this Zoom. However, because they're apprentices, you have a powerfully unique ability to really connect the theory to practice through projects and team assignments. And if it's their first class that the apprentices are taking, it is not very easy to bring them together. You want to go for the least path of resistance. So the first class, you really bringing in, what are team norms and having them pick a team name, which is really gets fun because they have some ownership in their work. And so, for example, in child growth and development class, you can really get into, the stages of infancy and what that even looks like in their own professional growth and development as it relates to a new employee, because many of them haven't worked before, as it relates to a new college student. So what does that look like to be a young, brand new novice college student or a brand new employee? So if you're a very skilled faculty person, you're going to do some data assessments beforehand. So your syllabus in the beginning, when you have that orientation, is a real powerful orientation, because you're going to pull in what is their language and literacy ability. So you're going to have them do some fun activities where you don't even know it's a real assessment of, who your English language learners are, who your low literacy learners are. You're also going to understand how they learn, what they enjoy, because many times they don't want to work with other people. But Dr. Sharon, why do I have to work with another person? I said, because, children come with families, and you're going to be in room with other adults. So you're going to have to figure out how to get along with people. So you have to intentionally have assignments and projects with clear rubrics for them to be successful. But you're also to, mix it up a bit for those who don't like working in groups, because right now, due to our post-COVID phase, everyone's online. All our Canvas stuff is online. So what does that look like in virtual practice, and how to give, participation points both in person and through your Canvas show? So faculty, you gotta level up because you need to come with a lot more knowledge, skills, and capacities, I think, than when I first started teaching back in, I'm dating myself a little bit, but back in 2002, 22 years ago. We have a new group of students. Your syllabus, yes, that's your guide, but you have to be willing to have that little sentence to subject to change, because as you get to understand who your apprentices are and their capabilities and their desires, like, why are they taking this class in the first place? Why are they in this field? What is their why? And how do you bring that why into your curriculum construction? And what does that look like in your own practice? And how are you willing to adapt and change? So yes, projects, teamwork, and also I will say community of practices. If you're college, if you have funding for you to get with other faculty members, it makes no sense to do this alone. This is strength in numbers. So if you have, 3 other faculty teaching the same class, which we do, we meet weekly, we check in. We are very, very clear on, what things need to adapt or change based on new ways of learning. But also too, like Cecilia and my colleagues stated, you're gonna have apprentices are going through stuff. They don't get to choose what happens. All they have is power in their response. And we have power in our response as well. If someone is struggling with a death in their family or illness or cancer, all these things come up in life that, of course, we don't plan. We have to be willing to help them, acknowledge their feelings and acknowledge what they're going through. But you're gonna hold them up. You're pushing them and you're holding them up at the same time, which is a little different, because you still want them to be successful and you still want them to be able to complete the class. And so understanding, student rights and all of the pieces that go along with being a empathetic, caring, knowledgeable faculty person. And Sandra, I hope I answered it. Please chime in if I missed anything. But syllabus is just a piece of paper, and it's going to change as you get to know your students. But you have to be willing to incorporate their interests and their whys into that, as well as push some assignments that may cause some discomfort. But discomfort is how we learn, right? It wasn't always.
That is great. And I will just chime into that. I can remember when I first started teaching, I just adopted the previous instructor's syllabus and assignments. And it wasn't until I got steeped in understanding what was happening that I was able to make some changes. And for all the ECE people on the call, you know that child growth and development is one of the more difficult classes. And just all the vocabulary and all the content is just so heavy and so much. And I remember the first time I decided to change up the syllabus and assignments on my own, I realized I had this classroom full of all women who had already given birth before. Like everybody in the class was already a mother. So I changed up one of the assignments so that it had to do with them sharing their birthing experience. I never had such a good assignment. Like everybody turned it in. Everybody wanted to talk about it. Oh, I can tell you about a episiotomy when I had to get this many stitches and I was in this stage of labor for this long. And it brought life to the course and to the assignment. And I think that's what the task of a good faculty really is, to have it be more about their experience, because then you have got them and they're engaged and that learning becomes real. And
Right.
that's really what we want for them.
Thank you, Sandra. Relevancy and responsiveness.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it turns on learning, and you can't get them to not turn it in on time.
Absolutely, absolutely. They want to turn it in and talk about it.
Yes, all of it.
Okay, we are having so much fun, but we are on our last question. So get your questions ready if you have questions for these wonderful panelists. So facilitating the development of impactful relationships with program participants also requires staff who are capable of reaching out and effectively engaging program participants. So Ms. Joy, I'm gonna put you back on the spot. In terms of understanding relationships is one thing, but finding faculty who are capable of reaching out and engaging students can be a challenge. What have you learned about identifying and training faculty and instructors to be effective in building impactful relationships, particularly with students from marginalized communities, first-generation college students, and students whom English is not their first language?
Beautifully stated. And I won't speak too long, because we, in addition to the teacher shortage, we have a faculty shortage. And that's what makes apprenticeship so powerful, because since we've been doing it for a while, many of our apprentices have gone on, got their BA and their master's degrees. And so when they get their master's degrees, guess what? They're eligible to teach at the college. And so what's wonderful is that we were been able to recruit our apprentices to teach some of the classes. And so I have to say, Cecilia's teaching for Berkeley City College. I'm still trying to recruit Daryl, but all that to say, I know they don't have time. But what I love about this grow is a formalized grow your own system. So for those who really enjoy working with children, teaching one part-time faculty class has been incredible, but you have to have a faculty orientation. You have to have a space for faculty to get together and talk to each other. So community of practice, which there is funding on campus to find funds to stipend faculty out so they can have those conversations. Faculty have data too, believe it or not. So you can say you're all about equity, but what does your numbers say? What does your success rate look like among your students of color, among different age brackets? So all of that data helps you really take the emotion out of it and really hone in on the practices that need to change to ensure success, because we want successful completers. And so faculty who are value aligned, they're welcome. And the apprentices will let you know. They'd be like, oh, Dr. Sharon, this person won't let us eat in class, or this person, marks us off 10. So you want to make sure that the faculty understand and also are available, because again, we do have some funds to do stipends for extra service is what it's called. And that is to make yourself available for follow-up meetings with the success coordinator. So it is a program. It's not just, same old business as usual. This is different because you are part of a program that is designed to ensure their success, not only in the college classes where they get successful grades. In California, you need at least a C grade or higher for industry certification, but you also want them to be successful in the workplace, which is a little bit unique. Because if they are not showing up to work, but going to class, or not showing up to class and going to work, it's like, wait a minute, how are we going to support you? Like Cecilia says, we notice these behaviors, what's going on? And you want to ask those type of questions. So faculty have to have that communication. They have to be willing to, understand why the assignment is late, or, why you're struggling. They have to ethically care about the success and have empathy. And so we do orientation so they understand what they're getting into. And easy in child development is pretty easy, because I like to brag and say we kind of come with that anyway. But it's when they get outside of our wonderful caring world, and they have to enter into, some of the gatekeeper classes, as I call them, English and math and science and all of those wonderful class experiences. But hopefully by then they have the agency to really advocate for themselves and understand how to navigate it. And again, our faculty end up becoming mentors, which is a very important component of the program. They need mentorship to be able to come back to and know who to come to if they're having any struggles on the college campus, and similarly on the employer side.
Great, thank you. Ms. Cecilia, I'm back to you. What practical suggestions would you make to others, particularly for those who work with high school students, around establishing balance between forging trusting relationships that foster student empowerment versus building relationships that lead to overdependence, which you've already kind of talked about, or unrealistic expectations on the part of the student?
Yeah, I think this is always the question. Am I doing too much? Am I enabling you? Am I pushing you? I really tried to think about, like, you got to know your students really well. What is their ZPD? What's the zone of proximal development, right? I always say that. Like, what are you talking about? But I really think it's key, because it's like, how do I not like enable you and do everything for you, but push you? But I have to know you, and I have to know where you're at in order to kind of like say, okay, actually, I'm gonna help you do this. And in the next sense, you're gonna do it on your own. And so I think providing knowing your students well, but then providing the scaffolding. Students oftentimes, they really need support and encouragement. You're doing this well. So really try to lead with that. Like that discussion that we were participated in was so good, because they're really insecure. They don't feel confident. So how do I build you up? Because I know I'm gonna have to correct you or push you in some way, but I built you up before, and that also solidifies my relationship with you, and all authentic. I'm just not making stuff up. And then I'm figuring out, okay, this is what you're able to do, but I need you to do this. So how do I help you through there? First, I'm going to scaffold. So I'm going to tell you what the email you got to email the professor. All right, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to remind you to do it. And I'm going to tell you what it should say, more or less. Now you're going to write it yourself. And then, and then they'll send it to me. Is this okay? Like, to really have a lot of anxiety about emailing a professor. And I'm like, looks great. I'm not correcting it. Looks great. And then they send it. And then the next time, right? Like, remember we emailed your professor? Yep. Then they email their professor on their own, right? And, oh, I got a response. And there's this pride all in and built in that. And that's kind of like one example how I think about it. Because sometimes it's like, okay, it'll just be easier if I do it. Yes, give me your password, which I've done. Give me your password, and I'll just keep giving it to you, because it just is easier. But then they keep asking me their password, and when I'm not there, they want to know their password. Instead of telling them, okay, I did that one time, and now I put your password here. So next time when you can't find it, you can go look for it for yourself. So I think there's I'm constantly learning, and sometimes I'll do a little bit of the enabling because I care and I want to care too much. But then I realize that's actually, I'm not helping them. Like, I can be successful. I need to help them gain the tools they need to be successful when I'm not around, when no one's around. It's just them, and that's what they want. And so I think just really trying to constantly balance their ZPD with what they can, and then push it, and then try to hopefully you're making that a little bit go longer along the way. And then in terms of boundaries, I think it really is, here's my expectation, and when you don't meet it, then I'm holding you to it. There's accountability built in. And with young people, it is calling home. I bring in parents a lot. Like, I've talked to you about this, and I gave you a due date, and it's today, and now I'm letting you know I have to hold you accountable, and I'm going to. And you can't text me at 10 o'clock at night. I'm not going to respond to that. So just some other examples of ideas of some of the boundaries I have to be clear about. Uh-oh, maybe you're losing me.
No, we got you.
Okay, it looked like I was losing it too. But just creating boundaries, providing scaffolding support, and then like pushing them, and also checking myself when it feels like I'm doing a little too much.
No, those were great examples. Thank you, Cecilia. And it looks like we are actually doing great on time to give Daryl the last question. And then we've got a question in the chat. So, Daryl, you worked with many apprentices over the past 6 to 8 years, both as success coordinator and as program manager. Can you share some personal examples of times when you successfully managed that balance between fostering empowerment and fostering dependency, and times when you didn't quite strike that balance?
Absolutely. Yes, I think one of the major themes that we're hearing throughout this is within building relationships is how you show up. How you show up is shows how much you value that relationship with that apprentice, and making sure you show up for them in a space that is, attentive and helpful and really, really, as Cecilia and I like to put it, from a place of love. Um, so I have worked with a lot of apprentices in a lot of different ways. And I think one of the biggest challenges for our apprentices was statistics, which was something that I was actually pretty decent in. So I became the unofficial official statistics tutor during this process. And, again, sometimes, as Cecilia was saying, this was one of those classes where you kind of, I was breaking everything down, and I know that I'm getting it to the simplest form, and it's like, you can do this. Like, you're following all the steps when we go through this. When I'm not there, show me the steps that, when the teacher is there, like, why is it not kind of coming over? And it's just having to have them build my questions into a paper, into a sheet. Like, here's what Daryl would ask. So when I'm not there, they kind of follow that guide, because there was a situation where, again, how you show up is really impactful in how apprentices receive you. And it was a crazy day. I went to deliver books to a student, and that student um, actually lived in like a tent. Like, I was looking for an address and I couldn't find it. And come to find out, the student was in a tent. So it kind of pushed my day behind. I had to deliver that. So I was really feeling a lot. And then I had to go to a meeting, and I was late to the meeting. And then at the meeting, it was like, well, if they can get here on time, you can get here on time, not really understanding what I was going through before I even got there. And then I have to go tutor um, statistics after that. So, you're really holding on to a lot of these things that came in, but the individuals I'm tutoring in statistics, they don't necessarily know that what I dealt with an apprentice earlier that day, or what I had to go through at a meeting about how I feel valued, and then now I'm here with you. So I have to show that apprentice that they are the most important thing, and that value them at that time, to get them to build and learn. And then again, helping them see that you can do this without me. It was a hard place to get to. But again, as much as you can template things and let people know that you are showing up for them authentically, and you're checking yourself at the door to be there for them. I think you're muted, Sandra.
You're muted.
I said that was amazing and awesome. Before I let you guys off the hook, we have a question from Miss Leela. And Miss Leela, did you want to pop on and ask your question, or do you want me to just ask for you? Let's see.
You can just read it. That's fine. If there's other, additional clarifications, I can chime in.
Okay, perfect. So we have what percentage of time do most EC apprenticeships allocate to relationship building specifically? And then how is it embedded in the daily schedule via games and social time? That's the first question. And then you can pop on.
I was going to say, I could kind of speak to that. We built in a lot of check-ins. So specifically with the success coordinator and the apprentice, there was a weekly check-in where they would check in as a group. And this was done online, some weeks in person, some weeks kind of based on how the program was structured. In addition to that, there were monthly trainings that we would do on Saturdays. And they weren't called trainings, they were called something different, wellness day. And you invite them for Zumba, but while we're in Zumba, fill out these 671 forms. So it was, really infusing all of the different ways to build those. But those were structured activities built into the program. So weekly check-ins with the success coordinators individually, weekend check-ins as a group, and monthly trainings that bring the group and the cohort together in addition to their classwork.
I'll just add, it was very high touch in the beginning. It's high touch for relationship building and orientation. And then they usually are on, they go after that. Like I guess the first 4 classes and they got it down. That's why I ask, is it the first class or their 5th class? Because it's a totally different group as they continue to take classes. For relationship building, as far as on the faculty side, is orientation in the beginning. And we always try to do an orientation before the class even starts to get them acclimated, you know, to the systems and all of that good stuff.
And Cecilia, you want to add to that? Do you have anything before we go to the next one?
I would just say adding like absolutely games, check-ins, peer reviews, like they did a presentation and I had them give each other feedback. So like also building relationships amongst the team on top, of all the students, as well as their relationships with adults in the program.
Great. And then we have, this one is from Miss Leela as well. Have you ever targeted moms of young children, maybe even subsidy receiving, to participate in an early childhood apprenticeship? If so, what does that look like?
Yes,
Beautiful.
so I was about to say absolutely. At my previous agency, we served about 1,200 families. So we used our Child Plus system to send out like advertisements for the program, and really doing the recruitment specifically from our families in the beginning. And then in addition, we partnered with the Department of Social Services to provide access for 20 members that receive what was called TANF benefits. In California, it's called CalWorks. But individuals that receive TANF benefits to go through the program and really track the progress through. And I believe they may be on the 4th or 5th year of that. So
and the design, Daryl, just to add, was during the day for them, because that was the time they had childcare. And so what their schedules look like is that they would go to one class Monday, Wednesdays in the mornings, another class Tuesday, Thursday in the mornings, the afternoons. They worked in programs or vice versa, depending on the program design. And then Fridays was mandatory tutoring, but everything happened when their children had subsidized childcare. And so what was wonderful is when they did that, then they were able to work and get money. And when they completed, they got raises. And like Daryl said, it's the 5th year. So it's a very strong proof of concept. It really does work.
Any more for that one?
And I just add, that's how I started. I was a Head Start mom that did parent volunteer. It's a definite proof of concept. You become a parent volunteer, a teacher's aide, a teacher. And so my children are grown now, but because of that, and because the only difference is apprenticeship gives you money. So they don't come out with student loans like me, but the same program formalized, but apprenticeship dollars make it debt-free. So if that's helpful.
That is wonderful. And I think we will wrap up. And as a mic drop, I'm just going to read MJ Schneider's final comment. She says, you all are truly inspiring. And I feel so grateful to know each of you is active in our community and our world. And I think that is a perfect mic drop. You guys did an amazing job. And I want to thank you all for attending very much. This has been recorded. The recording will go out. And thank you again for showing up. Thank you, panel. You guys were wonderful.
You too, Sandra. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And just before we go, in the chat, I have just dropped in 2 links. One to save the date for our annual National ESEPS Conference, which is going to be May 5th through 8th in Austin, Texas. And the second link is for our ESEPS boot camp coming up December 9th and 10th in New Orleans, Louisiana. So hoping you all can join one or both. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful day.